War Thunder is home to a wide variety of combat vehicles, with some performing at the top of their class and some that are nearly unplayable. However, this video will focus on a few vehicles that are just frustrating enough to sour the experience. That's not to say that every vehicle in this list is objectively bad, it's just my take on how they feel to play. And I've also asked some other content creators to share what their most frustrating tanks are. So let's start with the Albel HVG. The list isn't in any particular order, so let's just get straight into the video. This Italian light tank looks really promising on paper because it comes with a full stabilizer and APFSDS at battle rating 7.7. Now, before you start mumbling about Italian bias, here's the caveat. The main gun is only 60mm in caliber, so although it does fire high-velocity rounds with decent penetration performance, the low spalling damage leaves much to be desired. But surely the reload must make up for that, right? Well, no, as for some reason, this 60mm gun has a reload speed equal to late 120mm with a base reload of 7.8 seconds. Now, these 2 points by themselves don't really ruin the experience completely, but there's more. While the gun depression looks decent on paper, its forward arc is annoyingly blocked by the driver's hatch. And being a light tank based on the Albel chassis, it has very little armor and can be completely shredded by 50 cals, which are prevalent at the whole BR range this vehicle faces. And in full up tiers, post-war MBTs and other vehicles with commander override begin to show up, which is a rather frustrating feature to counter due to the limited spalling damage. Let's just say it's not the tank for me. However, the excellent mobility of the Albel HVG does mean it can still do some work by outflanking and shooting and scooting on certain maps. Continuing with the theme of inconsistent damage, I'll let Rayboon tell you why he dislikes the M41D.
My biggest disappointment of the last years was the Chinese M41D. As it had been shown first in the files, it already looked promising, and this impression got stronger as we could see it on the dev server of Update Winged Lions. It had an overall great performance on the dev server in my opinion, especially with its really good AP FSDS shell that had 311mm of penetration at 10 meters and a very stable post-pen damage on the dev server. The whole tank felt very good, but when Update Winged Lions got live, the Chinese M41D was just a mess and still is. Since then, its AP FSDS shell only has 280mm of pen at 10 meters and a bad post-pen damage. The gun handling overall is bad. It wiggles so hard when stopping the tank so that you have to look at how you stop the tank and try to pre-aim to compensate the gun handling when stopping the tank. The M41D could have been a great addition to the already mighty 8.0 Chinese BR with its great tanks, but compared to other light tanks like the PTL-02 or the WMA-301 having thermals and a stabilizer for example, the M41D gathers dust in my hangar.
Next, let's hear from Pandramodo and see what their least favorite tank is.
The T95E1. This tank is the only vehicle in the game that manages to make me irrationally angry. Sitting at 8.0, this tank is one of 3 medium tanks you could choose at that BR, which is a good thing because you'll be spared from using this thing. When you say medium tank, you expect a good balance between mobility, firepower and protection, and well, this thing certainly has a balance between them because all of them suck. Let's start with mobility. This tank has a very weak engine, which means you are very slow. And the thing I hate the most is that it has absolutely no maneuverability, so most vehicles will run circles around you. Firepower wise, it's mediocre at best, since a 90mm APFSDS is tiny and the damage is limited, not to mention it takes too long to reload. Oh, and did I mention it doesn't have a stabilizer? The armor is good from the front against kinetic ammunition, but in a BR where hit and ATGMs are abundant, it's not gonna do much for you. The tank has a cramped crew compartment, which means that if you get penetrated, you'll probably get one-shotted. Overall, the tank is a pain to grind and spade, and you're better off using the M60A1.
Hello fellow internet users and friends of About Thunder's YouTube channel, my name's Turny. And here is my worst tank in War Thunder, the T95E1. Wait, someone's already done that one. But I hate that tank the most. Well, there must be another tank I hate. Yeah, oh yeah, this one will do. Let's hop across the pond to the other country where English is the national language. The Chieftain Mark V. Now this is an odd choice for me, being that the Chieftain is actually my favourite tank, but quite frankly in War Thunder, it is absolutely terrible. To be honest with you, you could probably apply this to all models of the Chieftain, but I think on the Mark V it stands out as the worst. And to understand why, as on paper it actually doesn't look too bad, let's talk about a couple of things. The first one being War Thunder meta. Now at 8.7, the most effective tanks are the ones that can hold W key and go the fastest. The Chieftain doesn't do that. Chieftain is very slow. With 760 horsepower at almost 60 tons, the only thing you're going to be outpacing at your BR is a mouse. And this leads into further issues with the tank. Not being fast doesn't allow you to put the tank in an advantageous position. Often you will be shot trying to get to those positions by the much faster wheeled vehicles that can get to their advantageous positions much quicker than you, which forces you to play the slow roll, meaning you have to follow the standard routes of the map and try and stick to cover. And at this point we move on to the second bad part about the Chieftain, and that's the armour. Now you may think the Chieftain has some decent kinetic protection, and to some degree it does, but only from a very inexperienced, poorly placed shot on the turret or APHE. And even then, your bottom plate is only 76mm angled at 44 degrees. That can be penned by some quite low-grade APHE, and with ammo stored all over the tank, that's a one-shot. Now, why is it important to talk about the armour? Well, because you're slow, and if you can't rely on speed, you need to rely on some protection, and you haven't got any. Next we move on to firepower. Now you may think, oh yes, 120mm L11 cannon, now we're talking. Well, no. See, the Chieftain only fires APDS, which means it works off Gaijin's APDS algorithm as opposed to their APFSDS algorithm. Now obviously we can't all know what that is, but we know that it's going to behave differently to a rod. So even at 7.6 kilograms and 1370 meters per second, which by the way is a lot slower than DM23 out of a Leopard A1A1, you don't get very much spalling. And with 164 millimeters of penetration at 60 degrees at point blank range, well, the Leopard A1A1 has it trumped there too with 195 millimeters on DM23 at 60 degrees. And this pretty much goes for all tanks at this BR, firing an L7 cannon with the M23. Why is that important to know? Well, that's because the Chieftain sits at the same BR as all these other tanks. The OF40 MTCA, the TAM 2IP, which fires DM33, the Leopard A1A1, the Type 69 2G, which by the way sits at 8.3, which begs the question, why is this tank at 8.7? It doesn't have the firepower to match, it doesn't have any armour, and it has the mobility of a deep-fried slug. I don't know, I really don't. You may think it has some other bells and whistles, but well, quite frankly it doesn't. You've got a standard optical rangefinder, NVDs, or a HESH machine gun which helps you range in your HESH, which still doesn't work properly. Then we got a torque reload. Expert crew with a full maxed out crew, your best chances of reloading are in 7.9 seconds, for a round that will often pass through tanks and doesn't have as flat of a trajectory as APFSDS. I'm sure you're thinking, but Turny, there must be some good points about this tank. Well, of course there is. And here's the list of good things about the tank.
For this video, I avoided tanks like the Type 60 ATM and Panzerwerfer because those are already well known for not being very effective. Even so, there are still plenty of tanks that could be considered frustrating for one reason or another, but obviously this video has to end somewhere. So which tank is your least favorite? Let me know in the comments below. And a special thanks to everyone that helped with the video. Links to their channels will be in a pinned comment.